Just switched it to.
Okay, computer, I guess.
You got that here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Morning, everyone. Public parking lots.
Okay. Do we have everyone in? Okay.
I get to see 9 people, so that's it. Why is George in the middle of my screen?
It's a dartboard, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
All right. Just a reminder to everybody, we are recording this. We can selectively edit out the worst comments and put them right on our website. So, but you are being recorded. So, welcome everybody to another one of our Meet the CEO hours. This is a doubleheader. We've got 2 people who we're going to be featuring this morning. The outgoing or the past president of Coastal Heritage, Don Gill, and the new president and CEO, Bob Terravecchia. And this is really a chance for us to say thank you to Don for everything he has done. He's been a face of the South Shore for many years, a good friend of the chamber, past member of our board and executive committee, who has had several farewell parties scheduled for his retirement, all of them postponed and canceled because of the COVID, but we did want to get a chance for people to be able to wish him well and say thank you. And Bob Terravecchia, who we would normally welcome as a new CEO, but you've been around as a CEO for a while here on the South Shore, and very familiar, also having been on our board at one point. So I want to turn it over for a little while. We'll mute everybody but Don and Bob and have a little conversation with you. And I know a lot of people wanted to come on and wish you well, so we'll cut some of the interview section short in about 15 or 20 minutes so people can wish you well or pipe in. But Don, let me start with you.
Okay.
Don, a big thank you. And we'll get a little while later, we'll get into what you plan to do in retirement. But you went through about 3 mergers to get to this point, and you've been banking, I think, most of your life. But you're getting out at an interesting time. Good timing, by the way. You got out just in time.
Absolutely. It's all Terravecchia's problem now. So.
The town is his problem. Let him handle it. But give us a little background on the banking career and the biography and how long you've been down on the South Shore, and then where you're going to go from there.
Sure. I was born in a log cabin in Kentucky, and then I started my career in 1976 at Charlestown Savings Bank, which I believe is now part of Citizens, as an accounts payable clerk, and did just about every job in the bank. I ended up doing a short gig at Fidelity during the 80s and then back into banking. But just jumping quickly, I was the CEO at First National Bank of Ipswich, which I'm not sure, I think they're part of Brookline Bank now. And then came to the South Shore, to the then South Shore Cooperative Bank 14 years ago. No disrespect to South Shore Savings people on the line here, but we were considered like the little baby brother of South Shore Savings, and there was so much confusion when I first came down. So we changed the name of the bank to S Bank, the letter S Bank, which caused more confusion with people wanting to know what the S stood for. And then back about a little over 5 years ago, we got together with the then Scituate Federal Savings Bank and merged. And the big debate was, what was the bank's name going to be? At that time, most banks were trying to get away from the name of a city or town, especially when you're trying to expand into other communities. So Scituate Federal wasn't going to be considered. S-Bank was in consideration, and we actually, Dick Rowe, who was the CEO then of Situate Federal, he and I sat in one of those rooms where it's kind of like the police room where you have the window, you sit behind the window, and they brought in 3 different groups of people and threw out a whole bunch of names. One of the name was Coastal Bank, and then one of the names was Heritage Bank. And one woman in the first group said, well, why not put Coastal Heritage together? And I remember Dick and I immediately turned and looked at each other and went, wow. So the next 2 groups, they threw out the name Coastal Heritage, and everybody in the group, in those respective groups, all said that they loved it. And that's how the name came into existence. When we put our marketing teams together, they went out and did a really great job with the logos and the color schemes and stuff like that. So that was how Coastal Heritage came into existence. And just for the people who are not bankers on this side, the cost for regulatory costs and the IT costs, and Bob will talk more about that in a minute, it just have grown dramatically. It used to be, your compensation costs were your number one, and then God knows might be facilities or whatever, but regulatory costs go through the roof. So smaller banks like, South Shore Cooperative, Braintree Coop, Weymouth Bank, we couldn't handle all of those costs. So Bob and I got together and we sat around and just said, this kind of makes sense. To give you a frame of reference, I've used this line a million times. In the banking industry, from a regulatory perspective, $1 billion to $5 billion is small. 5 to 20 billion is medium, and over 20 billion is large. So after 2 mergers, the bank, Coastal Heritage Bank, is about 890 million. So we're not yet to small. So that gives you a frame of reference on the cost that we have to hang in there. So really that was, 4 community banks, S-Bank, Situate Federal, Weymouth Bank, and Equitable Bank that got together. 4 $200 million banks, if you want to put it that way, got to this size. And really it was, everybody had the same philosophy. As I can see Paul on here, it's the same routine. We were all community banks. Everybody cares about everybody in the community. We're the ones that, put into monies into the Little Leagues and the Girl Scouts and things of that nature. And we all hit it off so well. That's what made this all work. Our mergers couldn't have gone better. The same philosophies from the board of directors to the CEOs to the staff. It's been a great run, and I couldn't be happier than turning this over to Bob. So turn it back to Bob now. How's that?
That's great. Bob, what
Yes, Pete.
possible challenges are you taking on as the new president? Anything going on?
No, Peter, it's very placid. It's smooth sailing. Good morning, everybody, first of all. And Dawn, thanks for coming out of retirement so early to join us. We appreciate it. And I do feel badly, Dawn couldn't have retired at a worse time. The last 3 months of his career was dedicated. He was working constantly to make sure that we were up and running with the COVID-19 pandemic. And we were actually very fortunate that we had each other to work with on this. And I'd like to publicly say that Don has been a tremendous partner, and he's just a real champion of the community banking industry. And I would often say to him, because we worked really closely the last 2 years, and I'd say, Don, you could have, why do you want to put up with a merger the last 2 years of your career? Because as well as it's gone, and I can attest that it's gone fabulously, there's a lot of work to it. And there's a lot of nuance that goes into putting these things together. And he would just say, I wanted to build a lasting legacy. And, I think that that's a great testament. Peter, from a standpoint of what we're going up against now is just trying to figure out as we talk about what the new normal is, and trying to figure out whether or not the changes in customer behavior that has been the case over the last 3 months is going to be something permanent, or whether it's going to be subside as we get back into more face-to-face banking. It's going to be difficult to say whether or not what the lasting legacy of COVID-19 is going to be on not just banking, but all businesses in the future. And I think we're all trying to figure that out right now as we move forward.
Bob, you keep a somewhat low profile. You got young kids and you're busy, but I don't think a lot of people know your background. You're also an attorney. Don't know how much you've practiced law and how much you continue to do it, but give people some idea of your background.
Okay, sure. Well, I have an accounting background and I worked in public accounting. That's where I cut my teeth. And interestingly enough, I came to what was then Weymouth Cooperative Bank as a controller back in 1991. And I went to law school at night. I went to New England School of Law at night and graduated in 1995, which is hard to believe. It's my 25th anniversary. But it is. And continued to work in the community banking industry at Weymouth Bank, where we changed the name and became the treasurer and CFO. And I simultaneously built up, as you indicated, a law practice. And I concentrated a lot on taxes and trusts and estate planning. And at one point, Don Beltucci, who was my predecessor back in 2001, gave me a proposition and said, do you want to take over as president? Because he wanted to retire. And at that point, I said, well, it was kind of dealing with whether I wanted to be an attorney when I grew up or I wanted to be a banker, and decided that, hey, if I'll try this banking thing out, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to practicing law. And it's hard to believe, like, here I am 29 years into my career in banking, and it's a job I've grown to love. Community banking, I never intended to stay when I came. I see Paul Pecci on the screen, and Paul knows because I worked at a public accounting firm that used to audit what was then Braintree Cooperative Bank, and but it was a great background for me. I think the legal background that I do have augments my skills here, that I can read through documents and stuff. So it's been a very good background to have. But as I indicated, Peter, I've grown to really love community banking, and as Don is and still is, who are very passionate about what we do. I find that the local community banks are an underutilized and underappreciated resource in the community. And I really, one of the things that I want to do in this next phase of my career is to go out and spread the word that community banks are the place to go to. We are not controlled or operated by anybody out of state or out of the country. We're controlled by people that live and work and worship in the communities that we live in. And having that local presence, we have our hands on the economy. And I think that we're closer to the problems and challenges that you all have in your businesses, because we are a small business. So that's what I'm going to do. And I know Don did that. He was the outgoing chair of the Massachusetts Bankers Association this past year. And one of the things that he's done over the last several years of his career was to promote all the good works and deeds that we do as a community bank.
So your background's interesting. An accounting background, went to law school, and then jumped into an industry that is fail-safe. You remind me of Ken Quick at Curry College, who's on the line with that background. He's got the accounting background, the legal background. Remind me, are you a Curry grad, or did you use Curry for the capstone project?
Capstone. We used Curry for the capstone. That was then Weymouth Bank, and they did a tremendous job, and I met so many friends over there. As you say, Peter, when I grow up, I want to be Ken Quigley.
From a humorous point, Bob and I didn't know this, but a couple of years ago, we were at a chamber event, and it was one of the chamber breakfasts, I believe, and both Bob and I were speaking. I remember correctly, Eric was setting everything up, and I spoke first and mentioned that I was a graduate of Lowell Technological Institute, which is now UMass Lowell. And Bob came walking by me because he was the next speaker, and he came up and he said, "My God, I didn't realize it. We both went to the same school. Granted, decades apart, but we went to the same school." So,
and that was from a chamber event, and that led to the merger.
Well, pretty close to it, yeah. Yeah, we hated each other before that.
So Bob mentioned the community banking aspect. I always enjoyed stopping into the headquarters, Don, when, particularly at winter, if there was a little snow, and you always had the coffee pot out in the lobby. You'd come out, And you would just say, you know, we're the savings and loans of It's a Wonderful Life, one of my favorite movies. And you didn't enact the part of Mr. Potter at all. Always very welcoming. But tell me about community banking. Is it going to survive? How has banking changed since you started back in the 70s? And if you were starting the career over, would you get into banking, or would you follow the Ken Quigley route and go into higher ed where nothing changes?
Well, I'm not sure that whether I would or wouldn't go into banking. I mean, my brother was a banker back then. It was a bank called Suffolk Franklin Savings that, has merged along the way. But I think, whether it's, my son is a theology teacher at Xaverian. My daughter-in-law is in the administration at Merrimack College. So we sit and we talk about this regularly, about community involvement. I look at George, and even though we bust each other's chops, I watch what George does in the community. I watch, community banking is just one part of the community. We have the luxury of being able to help. George called, I'll give you a good example. George called us, a year ago and said, hey, we need funds for lighting, for the Christmas thing. I said, no problem. What do you need? That kind of routine. I think community banking, to answer your question, we're the community corner store that's going away, unfortunately. As much as I love community banking, to be able to compete with the giants. I mean, J.P. Morgan Chase is coming in. I don't envy, Chris, at Rockland or Eastern Bank, having to put up and fight to do what they need to do to stay up with those giants who are coming in. Community banking is a wonderful thing. I love it. You're right. I'm actually getting out at the right time because, the challenges that Bob is going to have to go through for the next 5 to 10 years before he ultimately retires is going to be so different from, what I've gone through. Technology. I remember the first IBM computer coming in, everybody standing around and pushing a button going, wonder what the hell this is going to happen. So technology is so fast. The fact that we're doing what we're doing right now, I'm so far behind. Whenever I have a problem with my phone, I just hand it to my 15-year-old granddaughter and say, Bella, what do I do? And she fix it, and she goes, here you go, Grandpa. But it's just changing so fast. And you get to a point where trying to keep up with it, it's time to hand it off to the next generation, and that's what I think we've done with Bob. And both of us were blessed with wonderful staffs that have gelled together perfectly. The technology that we're using now wasn't even thought of, never mind in existence, wasn't even thought of when I was starting out. So, I'll defer to Bob on this, on some of the things that, not just us as bankers, but, all the bankers are going through. Bob?
Well, you had planned this transition several years ago, which was troublesome for the chamber because we had hoped that you'd step up to be a chairman.
Yeah.
Let us know that you would be exiting the industry in a little while. We have two past chairmen with us today, Ken Quigley from Curry College and George Toma. And I know you and George, at least George says you two are very close, and he's always dropping your name, but I never mentioned you know him in your conversations, which I always found interesting. The picture of George giving you a kiss, on People magazine cover. It's it's amazing. But how come you never fessed up that you actually knew George and are friendly with him?
For what he just saw happen. There you go. Why would I? Now, actually, the timing, unfortunately for me, I love the chamber. I think the chamber is a community group, and just like the community bankers are, just like George's businesses and all of the businesses that are around here. Unfortunately, the mass bankers beat you to the punch, and literally my last day as chairman of mass bankers is today, and to go through the chaos and all of the regulations that we were talking about earlier, going to Washington to fend off some of the things that they're trying to do to one of the things, if I have one contention, it's when you hear on the news, oh, the banks. Well, they're talking about Citicorp and JP Morgan and Wells Fargo. They're not talking about all of the community banks that are so involved in every community. We've got about 130 banks in the state. And I have to tell you, I've met every single one of the CEOs, and every one of them is so concerned about their customers, about their staff, about the communities. You couldn't ask for a better state to have bankers in. This really isn't the giant banks. So when you hear, oh, the banks have done this or the banks have done that, it's frustrating for me to listen to that, because I know the depth and the efforts made by all of these bankers, and not just the CEOs, and Paul probably can attest to this too from Braintree's perspective, what we did to help the communities out, and will continue to do as long as we're in existence. But again, we're fighting, the big fish upstream.
I believe, Don, I think Peter said he just sent a message saying he got cut off. So I don't know if he got sick of what we were talking about and left, or he just really got cut off. So,
well, I did see George get up and walk over and push a button. So nice job.
Eric, are you the backup quarterback here, Eric?
Well, I can. I'll be glad
you go.
to.
Come on, Steedham, get the ball.
Steedham, yeah. No, well, I guess I would say to you, Bob, I know both Bob and Don from the chamber perspective that I have, and that's that I work in community development, which is the affiliations that we have. And I know that both Bob and Don have stepped up and have been with the Weymouth Chamber of Commerce since its formation, and have been a tremendous help in creating that Chamber of Commerce and the involvement that they have taken with the community of Weymouth. And we have today Dave Robinson, who is the past chair of the Weymouth Chamber, and Dave is with us, as well as Dennis Cohane, and Dennis is the current chair of the chamber. So Dave, I guess I'll go to you first, just to kind of reminisce a little bit about the early days and how Weymouth Bank and then Coastal Heritage has been so helpful to the formation of the Weymouth Chamber.
Oh, well, they were critical. I mean, Don, I remember my first meeting where I was the chair, which I was foolishly I didn't step back fast enough when they were looking for a new chairperson of the Weymouth Chamber. And Don came up to me immediately and introduced himself and took me out to breakfast. And he's been took a critical role in helping me develop the chamber and bringing it to where it was, so that I could hand it off to Dennis. And Dennis has done a great job from there. And Bob has been a long supporter, a power partner initially under Weymouth Bank, and has been a continual support and friend to the chamber and to me, and has taken me out to several breakfasts as well. So when I heard that they were merging, I'm like, wow, these are two people that I've spent so much time with that I thought would be great together, and then they end up merging. So, I'm very great. I have a lot of gratitude to both of them, because the Weymouth Chamber would not be where it is without either of them. And both
David,
of them.
you were just concerned you're going to lose one breakfast. Admit it.
Oh no, I do miss the breakfast, Don. So we'll have to get together when we're allowed to, because I'd like to take you out to breakfast and see how things are going in retirement. But congratulations, Don, on your retirement, and
Thank you.
Well deserved. And thank you for all your efforts on behalf of the Weymouth Chamber.
My pleasure.
David, I do remember, when Eric first approached us and started up the Weymouth Chamber, and Peter, it was a great initiative. They've done a tremendous job under your leadership. And also, obviously, under Dennis. Dennis is taken the baton and done a remarkable job, because there's always local issues that happen that needs some support, specifically we're talking Weymouth, here in Weymouth. And I do know that Jimmy Graziano was on the board, and then Sheena Kelly has been on that, and she's done a tremendous job. And I think having that local presence, that's one of the things, as Dawn indicated, that the community banks do. In addition to making donations, we do dedicate a lot of our people to these local organizations that really are very passionate about what goes on in their community. I know Mark D'Onofrio is on the line here, and he's the president of the Situate Chamber. So again, another affiliated chamber with the South Shore Chamber. And this is really the grassroots. We represent our business community, and we represent the towns that we serve, and we do so with a lot of pride and a lot of local knowledge. And I think that gets things done.
Yeah, and I've certainly seen that, Bob, with the local affiliations, and that on our boards of directors, it's, a lot of the community banks and those local businesses are the ones who are involved deeply with the local chambers and the big multinationals. I find that they're not quite as involved with the community. So certainly on the community level, what community banking has done has been absolutely tremendous. So we certainly appreciate it. And I think Peter is back.
I am. Sorry, had a little family emergency. My daughter kept calling in, and that disrupted the call. So sorry for that. She's up in Boston with a 3-year-old grandson and left her apartment key in Plymouth. Fortunately, I've got one, but I'm not up there. Don, you've got some grandkids, I think, hanging around. You spending more time with them?
I am actually. I have 3. I have Bella is 15, going on 30. Nate is 12, and Lexi is 11. And on Tuesday nights, we go up. Janice and I go up to Burlington, which is where they live. My daughter-in-law, like I said, I think she's the dean of students at Merrimack. She's in a room clustered doing one of these Zoom meetings with 100 of her closest employees. They finally come out for dinner, and so we social distance, but it's great to see them. I mean, one of the things that Bob mentioned earlier, retiring, this past month, and then going into basically quarantine, there's just not too much to do. So it's great to be able to go up and see them and spend some time with them.
So beyond the grandchildren, which will take a lot of time and a lot of fun, what are the other plans for retirement?
Well, one of the things that I hope to do is to travel. I mean, I love my job, but much like Mr. Terravecchia, we both spent a gazillion hours in there. There's, whenever we hired somebody, especially in the officer ranks, one of the things that we explained to them was, this isn't a 9-to-5 job, and especially if you're a smaller community bank, you need to fight twice as hard to keep up with the larger institutions. And, Bob mentioned, Mark is a good example. He's usually the last one out of the bank, and he may not think we don't notice, but we do notice that. And the efforts by all of the staff. So one of the things I think has been important to, like I said, myself, Bob, Paul, Chris, et cetera, is you have to lead by example. And so, we're one of the first ones in, we're one of the last ones out. As just using the chamber, the number of events, granted not recently, but the number of events that were going on, we were always at them because we recognized that we were the face of the community and that we needed to be out there. So, my travel wishes, let's say, just couldn't happen. And now, of course, I'm looking forward. I had plans to go to Greece. I had years ago in another life, I worked for a couple of years with the National Bank of Greece. Myself and the CEO were the only 2 Irish guys in there. But we made some good friends, and I had one of them who retired. His 70th birthday was this year, and I promised him that Janice and I were going to come out to Greece to celebrate his birthday with him. Needless to say, that's not happening. And as you mentioned earlier, and some of the people on the phone know this, I have an affinity for wine. So our other trip was to go out to the West Coast, to start in Washington, and then spend basically about a month just going down the coast to Washington, Oregon, California, et cetera, and just stopping and enjoying, all of the vineyards there. So as you all heard this morning, they've shut down California again. So needless to say, that's not happening. So I'm spending a lot of time in Hanover admiring the empty wine cases that should be filled by now. So.
So is there a novel in you, Paul Petchy, when he retired from banking, he left South Shore Bank, wrote the first novel, and we're going to arrange for both Bob and Don to get an autographed copy of the Petchy Chronicles, the first novel. But is there a novel in you, Don?
No, not at all. I'll drink to his chronicles, but that's about it.
You've got a lot to talk about, Don. You
I'm
really
sure I
do.
do. Yeah. Yeah, but I could
So-
get a lot of people in trouble if I did. So we'll leave that alone.
So Paul, you've known Don a long time. If he were going to write a novel, what would it be?
If he were going to write a novel,
What novel would we want to get out of either Terravecchia or
well, I'll tell you, I'm very, very pleased with the foresight of the people in Weymouth to transplant 2 saplings from the North Shore and put them in the fertile soil of the South Shore, and they both blossomed into, I think, the best bank CEOs around. And so I'm really, really, I think it would just be a great story on how you got North Shore people to actually assimilate into the South Shore and be as successful as both of them have been, really.
Well,
Peter, I am begging you, do not ask George that question.
well, for one thing, we're going to cancel Petchy's book order. This is the South Shore Chamber, and we don't need to plug the North Shore. So
Okay.
you got to know your audience, Paul.
No, it's what the South Shore did.
Okay.
We beat the North Shore out of them. That's
I'm 1/3 through Paul's book, and I can. It's an amazing book. And Paul, to just give you a shout out, it's the amount of history that you've interwoven with your characters is amazing. And it's first on my summer reading list. And kudos to you, Paul. Very impressive.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank
So
Do
I'm
you,
going to.
do you talk about wineries in Italy in this book?
There's a lot of, well, yeah, they had wineries back then. They
Okay.
weren't top notch as they are today, but they were good.
So I'm going to ask our 2 past chairs the same question, but of each. I'm going to ask Ken to tell us what Bob Terravecchia's book of a lifetime should be about. And I'm going to start with George to tell us what he thinks Don's life book should be about.
George, you're on mute.
And keep it clean, George. It's recorded.
You're on mute, but stay on mute, George.
Well, I had a whole script written, and then you told me this thing was going to be taped. So that's actually what I just threw in there. So I can't really say a whole lot. And I didn't realize I was mute, so you didn't hear all the stuff I said. But I mean, I've known Bob and Dawn a long time. So Dawn's book, I think he kind of said the same thing over and over again, community, people, that kind of stuff. So I don't want to make him cry, but I mean, he's just a really nice person. And I think when he gets out of bed in the morning, I think he really cares about making a difference. He mentioned his legacy. So I'm trying to keep this serious, which is going to be difficult, but he does have a legacy. And I think that a lot of people use him as a role model in the community, in banking, in the chamber. And I value his friendship a great deal. Bob, I don't really know you as well. I look forward to someday being able to spend some time together, but I really appreciate the time we spent together, and thank you. And you made the chamber meetings almost tolerable. Is that the right word?
People who don't know George don't realize that after being that generous, I am now going to get emails for the rest of the day with 50 suggested titles from George about what novel should.
I refrained from all, say, Bob, I didn't know you were a lawyer. So banker and lawyer jokes, really? You set me up. I thought they had me muted on purpose. I thought they talked to Mrs. Toma.
So, Ken Quigley, let me put you on the spot. Bob is not a Curry alum, but he did do one of your capstone projects and has that similar background of accounting and law. What would his novel be, or his biography be about? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Ken. Can we get him unmuted? Wait a second. All right. No. Now we've got you muted.
There we go.
Unmuted.
There you go.
It wasn't worth the wait, I'm sure. Bob loves people. And consequently, he loves helping people and he loves seeing other people succeed. And that's what I think of when I think of Bob Terravecchia. I've seen it on our campus right here, and I've seen it up and down the South Shore. Quietly, with a smile, helping other people. Dawn, I just know the respect from a distance across the chamber room, and I wish you nothing but the best. That's
So,
it.
Ken, when we finally got you on, the first words out of your mouth was, it wasn't worth the wait. I thought that was going to be your suggested title for Bob's book, now that he's president of the bank. Bob, was it worth the wait? Where were you taking the bank?
Well, I mean, Peter, I mean, post-COVID, we're, again, as we said a few times previously, we're committed to the communities that we serve. I think technology and customer behaviors are really going to dictate where this industry goes. I think there's a lot of uncertainties as to how rapidly. I do think the COVID-19, I just sent an email to some of my staff this morning about some comments made in a publication I recently read of another bank and their thoughts on it. And I'm going to just be challenging the department leaders of this bank to do two things. One, have a vision to where what we need to do to attract and retain customers and attract and retain good employees. I firmly believe that we need to incent people, younger people, to come into this industry that have talents that are different than just banking, and to have continuity and turn this over, just as Dawn turned over the baton to me and our staff now, and most of us are not being ageist, Dawn, about 10 years difference. I think that it's incumbent upon us to identify folks in their 30s and 40s that are committed to this industry, and to develop them, to provide them with the opportunity, the tools to go out into the future and make this company what it needs to be. So that really, Peter, is what we got to do. It's continually evolving to attract and retain customers and our future employees and leaders in this industry.
Good. Let me ask you about comparisons in the North Shore and South Shore, since Paul raised this. You both have those North Shore roots. How would you two compare North Shore and South Shore, and how the South Shore has changed, or how it's changing now?
You want to tackle that one, Dawn?
I'll start and then hand it over. We
right.
seem to be doing this along well. I grew up in Medford, and anybody who knows the North Shore, it's actually Metha. And so to that end, to me, the South Shore before I came here was the place that you drove through on the way to the Cape. I don't think I stopped. My brother, a long time ago, lived in Hanover, so I had a little flavor for it. But when I came down here, and people were gracious, George being one of them, to take me around to different places. Peter, you as well from the chamber side. And I began to realize what wonderful communities were here, whether it was Braintree or Hanover or Pembroke, et cetera, going to Situate and seeing, again, you're landbound in Medford. So to go to Situate and Cohasset and see the beautiful shores that were there, it was spectacular. So I quickly fell in love, with down here. I live in Hanover, been here now for 10 years. I moved, and spent 1 year in an apartment up at Granite Links, just so that I could spend the time driving around and looking for a community to, and a place to move in. I find that, and Bob and I have actually talked about this, it's a whole different ball game. And I say this not because everybody here is probably from the South Shore. It really is much more friendly. I think it's much more family oriented. You know, again, Medford's a very large city. You're 5 miles outside of Boston. Similarly, you know, Malden, I went to school in Arlington. It really is a different, it's a calmer, and I guess that would be a good word, a calmer side of Boston than the North Shore. I love the North Shore. Again, that's where my roots are. I grew up, but it really, really is a whole different ballgame. Bob?
Absolutely, Don. I grew up on the mean streets of Wakefield, Mass, which is, you know, more or less as far north of the city as Weymouth is south. And when I worked at Weymouth, I commuted for 9 years. My wife was working at the time in Salem, New Hampshire, and I was working in Weymouth. So I lived in Stoneham at the time, and we used to laugh. You know, she'd go 20 miles north, I'd go 20 miles south. When I became president in 2001 of what was then Weymouth Bank, I made the decision. It was a tough decision, actually. My wife, you can imagine this, my wife at that time was pregnant, 8 months pregnant with our fourth child. She had grown up in Wakefield as well. And we basically moved to Weymouth, which in her mind was, we may as well just have moved to Panama because it was really far away. Her whole support system was taken away. And I would say for the first 3 years, she pretty much didn't talk to me because I moved her to Weymouth. I've been here 19 years now. I've worked in Weymouth for 29, but I've lived in Weymouth for 19 years now. And as Dawn said, you know, the differences beyond some of the obvious ones, you know, North Shore, people would say that, you know, that's roast beef, and South Shore is bar pizza. And I discovered that there's heck of a lot of good bar pizza in the South Shore. But beyond the superficial chain differences, I would say I agree with Dawn. South Shore is a little bit more spread out. I think the North Shore is a little more edgy. You go into the towns, you know, our families are from Malden or Somerville and Revere. You know, those places are certainly more condensed. South Shore, when we drove around looking for places when we moved here, we were surprised at just the lack of density. And I know, Peter, that fits into a lot of some of the challenges that you've championed on the South Shore, which is transportation, and somehow how do we attract businesses to come on the South Shore? Because as Dawn said, it's a great place to bring up a family. I mean, we've got 5 kids, and my kids have grown up, you know, now because we spend so much time here that they're South Shore kids. As much as it kills my wife, you know, we're North Shore people, but my kids are South Shore, and they'll probably end up putting roots down here. But one of the things that I noticed, because a couple of my kids are in tech, and they're gravitating more toward the North Shore again because of tech jobs. And Peter, I know that you've been a huge champion of trying to attract those types of businesses to say, hey, listen, the South Shore is a great place to live. Bring your business down here, and you can live and work and cut down on your commute, rather than have every small business have to go up and be up in Cambridge or Watertown or those towns. So there's certainly differences, but you know, there's great place.
Bob, I'm going to throw one out to you and let me know, and I'll say the same thing to Paul. I can give you a great business comparison. I worked in banking on the North Shore for a long time, and then came down here. We have a group of probably 15 to 18 CEOs that we would get together monthly, either, you know, for dinner or events, just to get together and to throw things around, not sitting there, you know, combining rates, believe me. And we try to do the same thing on the North Shore. I think Bob's comment about edgy is appropriate. About 2 or 3 meetings in 10 years ago to the South Shore CEO Bankers Group, you know, I made this comment to them. I said, we couldn't do this on the North Shore. There's a protectionism type of mentality up there that, you know, if you as a banker were telling another banker what you were doing, you know, they might steal it from you. I know that sounds silly, but that's in fact the mentality that was up here. I was so shocked at how open and caring every one of the South Shore Community Bank CEOs were about sharing and what they were doing in their communities to take care of their staff, take care of their customers. It really was night and day. So, unfortunately, you folks don't have that comparison. I have the luxury of having seen that. And I tell you, you've got a bunch of great business leaders down here that are willing to share with others. And Peter, I think you foster that through the chamber. To the extent that their businesses get together. I mean, George and I bust each other's chops all the time, but the fact of the matter is I know how much he cares. I know what he does for the community. You know what he does for the community. And I just, it's an amazing difference. It's that family orientation that I find so different on the South Shore than the North Shore.
That's so nicely said. And I think all of us involved in the community knew that. I'm really seeing so much more of it come out during this shutdown. There's very little you can say that's good about a pandemic and an economic shutdown. But watching the way people have come together to support one another, everyone sacrificing to some degree, in some cases sacrificing a lot, but still keeping their heads up, looking forward. How do you think the South Shore and businesses are going to get through this? What do you see ahead?
Dawn, you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Peter, I think a lot of it is going to come down to, we've had to give our share of loan deferrals with regards to residential customers and commercial customers. I think one of the things that's differentiates us from larger companies is that we really know our customers very much. And we were talking earlier, Dawn was talking about accessibility. I mean, my customers have my cell phone number. I've talked to customers on Sundays, texts, whatever. I pride myself in being accessible to our customers. And I think that proved spades in the PPP arena, where people were scrambling around trying to get assurance that they would get funding. Where it goes, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know where it's going to go. I think a lot of it is contingent upon whether or not we experience perhaps what's going on in some other states where they've opened, and then the numbers spiked to the extent where the health officials were concerned and kind of went back to an earlier phase. Some companies, even we had a great economy, you always have companies that even in good economies are marginal. And I think that there'll be some culling out of those marginal companies throughout all banks. And I think we're all trying to figure out what the attrition rate is going to be on some of the customers that all community banks had that were maybe on the margin that aren't going to make it. I think it's too early to tell. Most of the deferrals that banks have done have been either 3 or 6 months in duration. We're just finishing up the 3 months. If somebody deferred their payment for April, May, and June, if the bank did, July 1, if it's a residential loan customer, July 1, tomorrow is when their payments due. It'll be, I think we really will see the effects of the credit impact on this, on banks in general, in the third quarter, when 2 things will happen. One, we'll see whether or not they've have the resources, or their businesses have at least come back sufficiently to be able to service their debt and pay their bills. And the second thing is, do we have a second wave of COVID-19 in the fall? And does the governor decide that we need to go back to more restrictive rules of engagement? And I don't know if some companies, they may have been able to handle the first wave, but I think a second or third wave of this is causing challenges. I see Gina and Paul Grandpre and Gina Glickman from Massasoit. I mean, this in Ken with higher education, I think this has impacts that some of our companies have done really well. Surprisingly, their business has picked up because of the pandemic. I mean, if you were in the plexiglass business, boy, you can't get enough plexiglass made, right? So you're doing great. If you're a restaurant or you're a hotel, not so much. So I think there's going to be pockets where some places, companies are going to really benefit from this. But, overall, it's kind of hard to go from 3% unemployment to 15% unemployment and think that that's not going to have a permanent impact at some capacity. So again, Pete, a long-winded way of saying I absolutely don't know what's going to happen. Guardedly optimistic that I think the governor's done a great job And I think that the healthcare system in Massachusetts is one of the most resilient in the world. And I think the remedies that they've come up with to try to keep this pandemic at a controlled pace has done well. We'll see what happens in the fall when people start going back to school and larger groups start gathering, and whether or not there's a second wave.
Well said.
Good. So I want to open up the last few minutes to people if they have anything to ask or say. I do want to call out a couple people that I see on the screen. Mark D'Onofrio of Coastal Heritage, who you both know very well, sits on our board. So Mark, since you've been a member of the board and on the leadership now, we want to just raise your hand so people know who you are. And Dr. Grape of Harbor Medical Associates is going to be our guest next Tuesday, talking a little bit about the healthcare issue and where Harbor Medical is, and Harbor Medical is part of Brigham and Women's healthcare. But Peter, just want to raise your hand so we see on the screen. There you go. Thank you. So we'll be joined by you next week for one of these. But let me open it up. We've got about 5 minutes left, and if we can unmute people, if anyone has anything to say. Go ahead.
Looks like Dennis.
Go ahead, Dennis. Let me see if we can unmute you.
Thanks. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I just wanted to agree exactly with what Dave Robinson said. From the Weymouth Chamber of Commerce's perspective, we simply wouldn't exist without Bob and Don's support and their team at Coastal Heritage. So thank you for everything that you guys do, and really for serving as an inspiration to me for what community service looks like. So thank you, and good luck, Don. Don't drink too much wine. All right.
I'll try not to.
Go ahead, Paul.
Don, I just want to congratulate you again on a great career, and wish you all the best in retirement. It is going to be different, but you know, like you, I've seen my wine cellar depleted. So congratulations to you, and congratulations, Bobby, to you too. You've got, thank God, I think Don will probably agree. Thank God we're out of it now. And
Absolutely.
it's all on you now. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, Paul. You know, Peter, to your point earlier, yes, I did get out at the right time. I was listening to Bob talk about all the chaos that he's going to have to do, you know, going forward, one with the PPP loans. But, you know, besides, you know, I think Mark and his staff, there was an article in the Boston Globe a couple of weeks ago about how the kids were up here at the bank and at many other banks too, you know, at 2 and 3 in the morning, trying to get those loans through to help all of the customers, whether it was the Mad Hatter or wherever. There was a ton of people that were in needs of these loans to keep in existence. But then similarly, you had the residential side, where now all of the consumers who were put on furloughs or were laid off or whatever, who had to come to the bank, and trust me, there were hundreds of them that came and put, you know, the pressure on the residential division, you know, to give them the 3-month probationary period or 6-month, whatever it now is, because it's changed so many times. So there's been a tremendous amount of work going on at all of the community banks to take care of their customers, and I don't think they get a chance to realize, you know, we probably did, and Mark can attest to this, over $40 million in loans in a very short period of time. That's a year's worth of loans. In the banking industry alone, they put in 18 days what they would put on in 2 years. So, and all of this was just to help their customers. So, you know, you asked me earlier on, you know, and David made that comment, you know, it is what community banking is all about. It's about, you know, that's what I loved about my career was, you know, there were times that a lot of customers weren't happy with me because there were things that they wanted that I couldn't do for them. But I think for the most part, we made every concerted effort to try and take care of our customers. And I see that in Bob. I see that in his emotions when he talks about his customers. The fact that, you know, they've got his cell phone number, and Peter, you know, my office was on the first floor by the branch. So I wanted any customer who wanted to come in and have a conversation or yell at me or whatever, you know, they had the access to it, and that's really what it's all about. So thank
Great.
you.
Bob Terravecchia, thank you for everything the bank has done for the community and the chamber. And we know you're going to stay close to the chamber and be involved under your new leadership. And Don, again, thank you for everything you've done for me personally and for the chamber and what you built up with the bank. And when we get out of this, and Dr. Grape can tell us next Tuesday when we can get out of this and have your retirement party. But I look forward to be personally and share a glass of wine.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. And to all of you, I wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thanks.
Love you. Congratulations. Good luck. Pal.
Thank
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
everything, Don. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
we'll see you.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, Bob.
Oh,
Don.
I don't have to see you again for another 6 months.
See
And
y'all.
I don't need to get a haircut for another 3 months.
There you